Hello, psychologist Yulia Latunenko is with you, and today we have a very sensitive and serious topic. It is about physical violence against children. Specifically about beating children or slapping them, which are not considered physical violence. For some reason not considered, because some children say, "No, I wasn't beaten, only sometimes." They were spanked, given a slap once, but that's not beating. And some parents also say that they didn't beat their children, they only gave slaps. But then what is a slap? If it is not physical violence. To which category of influence can a slap be attributed, if not to physical violence? And are you aware that French psychoanalysts conducted research on how a small child emotionally reacts to a slap when they are dependent on their parents and receive this kind of physical violence, which for some reason is not considered physical violence? So the result mentioned in the book by Françoise Dolto, a French psychoanalyst, is striking. The child, in terms of the intensity of their experiences, a slap or a smack, as we say, the child experiences it like a raped woman, exactly such experiences. The child holds in their heart, so why don't we call slaps or smacks physical violence? No, that's exactly what it is called. So please, if you have resorted even once to slaps or smacks, acknowledge that you have committed physical violence against your child. Against a child who is emotionally and materially dependent on you, who cannot survive without you. So such a child will be forced to endure this violence and will adopt it in their life. The models that violence, this is the norm for close relationships. Violence is equated with love. That's why in adulthood, we often see how many people whose parents supposedly didn't beat them, but only slapped them, act towards each other. Physical or psycho-emotional violence. Very often parents later say that everyone used to raise children this way. Everyone gave slaps, spankings, everyone hit. We just didn't know. We had no information at all. But all of this is an excuse for violence. At the very least, more violence is immoral, because any normal, healthy person knows that hitting a child or an animal that depends on you is immoral, and to a greater extent it is a criminal offense. Therefore, the first thing to do is not to avoid acknowledging what you have done to your child. And even if you resorted to slaps, you need to admit what you did. Physical violence against your child, and apologize. Sincerely, apologize to your child. Without justifying yourself, but specifically for those instances you remember. Precisely those instances when the child was defenseless before you and was somehow inconvenient for you. Because all these beatings, slaps, smacks, they have only one goal: to make the child convenient for the parents. Like a little dog, like a house cat. And if parents knew that a child, like a pit bull, could latch onto a leg in self-defense or bite very painfully, I think they would stop their violence. And that's why I believe it's immoral. Because parents know that the child won't fight back because they are dependent, because they are weak. Therefore, we need to acknowledge it as such. We are not perfect. And if it happened, admit your fault and tell your child about it. Apologize without excuses, because very often parents apologize in just that way. Oh, today is Forgiveness Day. Sorry. If I offended you in any way, this is not an apology. It's a formal gesture that carries no emotional weight at all. So, this is not an apology. It's just a formality. A person says, well, if you made up your mind that I offended you, because I don't know whether I offended you or not, then I'm sorry if you act like that. Feel bad, but I don't know if I offended you or not. It's all formality. Or parents start apologizing with excuses and say, well, I blurted it out because you were being disobedient. This is not an apology, it's an accusation. Well, I slapped you because everyone did it. We didn't know any better. I had a hard life. This is not an apology. It's a justification of violence. Apologizing properly to your children should be sincere and without excuses. And even say that I am very sorry that it happened and that I did it. There are no excuses for this because I slapped you, a defenseless little one, or even hit you. But few parents are capable of admitting their guilt. Most parents downplay their responsibility by saying, we didn't hit, we only gave slaps. But every slap, we do not know how it will resonate in a child's heart and where it will later sway their psyche. Because in my practice, I have seen a person who, throughout their life, was hit once on the bottom with a skipping rope by their parents. And this person exhibited psychopathy. She was not beaten again, but emotional abuse was also present. She was made to kneel on buckwheat in the corner and was given a stool to hold in the corner for hours. This is also emotional torment, and parents do not consider it as violence. They say, we did not beat our child, we loved her, we did everything for her, we lived for her. But all of this is physical and emotional abuse. If you realize all your mistakes, you should simply apologize to your child and thus make it easier going forward. Her life. Subscribe to my channel, give this video a like or a dislike if you don't like the content I provide. Be honest in your reactions. So, if you are visiting my channel for the first time, then I ask you to subscribe. You will find a lot of honest content about psychology here. Well, let's continue with what will happen to parents who have committed physical violence against their children. Every action we take has its consequence, and therefore even a single slap to a child will have its consequence. So, the first consequence is that the child is traumatized. Being subjected to beatings, physical or emotional, abuse can cause a child to become stuck in their childhood traumas, leading to a lack of self-confidence, self-hatred, difficulty in finding a suitable partner for life, and treating their own children in the same way, as they lack a model of a normal, healthy relationship with a child. She may be a failure, insecure, and unable to achieve in her life. Not realize any of her dreams. Fail to achieve anything. Simply live her life. Just like her parents, live without filling her life with anything interesting. And it is precisely due to physical and emotional abuse that a child who experiences what I am talking about now. This is a broken up destiny. This is the first consequence that can occur for parents. Surely when you hit your child and provided for their needs, you didn't intend to break their destiny. You probably did it in order to help the child grow up to be a normal, healthy child. But admit that when we hit defenseless children, we are actually serving our own ego. And in reality, we are not doing good for our children. We are doing good for ourselves, so that the children are trained, so that the children are convenient, so that the children do not bother us. That's why we hit our children. A child who has experienced even minimal physical and emotional abuse from parents will have emotional problems in their adult life. They may become an abuser themselves, or they may encounter several abusers as partners. They will feel loneliness. They will feel an inner emptiness and will try to fill that emptiness with various chemical substances. Alcohol, drugs, smoking cigarettes, or disordered eating, sex. Or they will simply try to fill that emptiness with someone by consuming this person and creating for themselves the illusion that someone loves them if they consume or are consumed. Someone loves them. This is a sacrificial path, a path of enduring violence, because this is the way of life parents show their children when they slap them, humiliate them, or punish them in degrading ways, such as making them stand on buckwheat. Such a child may spend their entire life trapped in the jaws of their childhood trauma. Well, unless they suddenly find themselves in a psychologist's office. And then something might start to change, but it might not happen. And a person might remain infantile and undeveloped until their death. Is this what you wanted for your children? Did you really want to ruin the fate of your child, the child, when you hit your defenseless child? Did you really think you were doing good for them? After all, any violence is on the opposite pole of good. It's a crime. Besides, the child might grow up to be a failure, full of problems. The second consequence you face for resorting to physical violence against your child is receiving the same treatment from them as you gave to the child. That is, the child, perhaps out of a sense of guilt that you instilled in them from a young age, police might call you just to check a box, to mark their presence, but in reality they won't want to communicate with you. This will happen only to avoid feeling guilty, because children know that parents prone to violence are skilled at manipulating feelings of guilt. But it's not sincere. It's, again, violence against oneself. The child's indifference is wrapped in a layer of guilt. Here is the genuine or the truth. Here is the consequence that awaits parents who resorted to physical and emotional violence. But a child who was blamed and manipulated through guilt may never tell you about it unless they go to a psychologist and start their psychotherapy. But you will always feel that there is not enough attention from the child. Not enough time the child wants to spend communicating with you. Avoids communication, you will feel loneliness and a sense of being unnecessary to the child. But this is exactly what you showed the child as a model of close relationships. The child does not build this on their own. So in relationships, the child takes this model that parents have clearly and visibly shown them since childhood. If you hit your child and even minimally slapped them, you risk spending your old age in loneliness, expecting those handouts from the child that they give out of a sense of guilt. Just those rare phone calls or insincere interactions with you. In reality, a child cannot want to communicate with a person without feeling guilty, but simply out of love when they have experienced violence from their parents. So don't count on a sincere glass of water in your old age if you have hit or slapped your child. This might happen insincerely or perhaps not at all, and you may feel completely alone. The risks are very high. Like many people who come to me for consultations already as adults who carry the burden of parents who inflicted physical violence and they need to be cared for in old age, to worry about them and oh, well, how somehow, be their parents, that is, to switch roles. And such children say, I'm very ashamed to admit that my parents died, and I felt relieved that instead of sorrow and tears, I felt joy. And they are frightened by such feelings because they do not realize that an emotionally close bond was not created between the parents, which is true, sincere love. Do not treat your child as though an inconvenient burden. And then in old age, you will not be a burden to your children. Love your children sincerely without resorting to physical violence. And then in old age, you will receive genuine reciprocation. Love the child, not just for show, not out of a sense of guilt. This was psychologist Yulia Latunenko with you. Subscribe to my channel to receive a lot of useful information on psychology. And also, don't forget to like or dislike if you disagree with something.